Good morning and welcome to yet another Legdem program. Today we have Dr. Radha Bhaskar talking to us on unique aspects of in Trinity's compositions. It's bound to be very interesting. We are looking forward to a great program. Thank you.
Gajananayutam Ganeshwaram Gajananayutam Ganeshwaram Gajananayutam Ganeshwaram Gajananayutam Ganeshwaram Bhajami Satatam Sureshwaram Shri Gajananayutam Ganeshwaram Bhajami Satatam Sureshwaram Shri Gajananayutam Ganeshwaram Bhajami Satatam Sureshwaram Shri Gajananayutam Ganeshwaram Ajendra Pujita Vigneshwaram Ajendra Pujita Vigneshwaram Ajendra Pujita Vigneshwaro Garnadi Salnuta Pada Padmakaram Ajendra Pujita Vigneshwaro Garnadi Salnuta Pada Padmakaro Kunjara Banjana Chaturadara Karo Guru Guhakrajo Pranavakaro Gajananayutam Ganeshwaram Bhajami Satatam Sureshwaro Shri Gajananayutam Ganeshwaram A very good morning to all of you. First of all, I would like to thank Sri Tyaga Brahmagana Sabha for giving me this wonderful opportunity, I would say, to delve deep into the topic of unique aspects in the compositions of the Trinity. As far as the Trinity is concerned, I think it's almost a topic which has been overdone by so many scholars and musicians. And as Rasikas as well as students of music, we do have quite a bit of information also about their monumental contribution to Carnatic music. So in my presentation today, probably some of the things may be known to you. I'll also try to share some things which probably may be a revelation to you. Here I would like to probably compare it to the Harikatha of the Ramayana that we keep listening to. We all know the story of Ramayana, but nevertheless, we come back to the Harikatha performance of the Ramayana again and again just to discover new things in it. New things in terms of new perspectives. The story is the same, of course, but what it can offer to us in terms of the learning experience. So similarly, I would say that today it's going to be probably some kind of a learning experience for me as well as for you Rasikas. If you look at the compositions of the Trimurti, in English we call Trinity, Tyagarajar, Dikshidhar and Shyama Sastri. We could say that as Vagyakaras, again here Vagyakara is a very precious term, I would say, because of the fact that they were Vagyakaras of the highest order. Vak, Geya, Kara means one who is the composer of the Vak, the lyrics, Geya, the music, and the creator, Kara. So, in modern parlance, we see that many times somebody creates the lyrics and somebody else puts the music to it and so on. But here in their case, it was an absolute divine outpour, something which we cannot even comprehend. It is just that we can look into it, just peep into it, that's all. So it is a divine outpour that has happened where the Sahitya, the Sangeeta, the Tala, that is the Laya, all seamlessly came together as one and of the highest quality. And that is why we hail them as the Trinity or the three composers who have really been given a distinct place in our Carnatic music. Also from the historical perspective, if we see that they have formed a major landmark in the history of music itself, because we say Trinity, pre-Trinity, post-Trinity. There is also a very valid reason for this kind of a demarcation in history that has happened. This is more from a practical perspective that I want to share, where we can understand how the history of music itself has evolved around the compositions of the Trinity, in the sense that in the pre-Trinity period, we see that we have had many saint composers coming in here who have poured out their bhakti through the medium of music to God. Among this, of course, when I say this name, immediately your mind will go back to the great composers like Annamacharya, Purandaradasa, Bhadrachala Ramdas, Sadashiva Brahmender, going back a bit further, Arunagiri Nadar, the Thevaram Mover, and so on. So what is distinct about their music is that here, the music has been very simple and communicative, and the lyrics has been very predominant. And that's why you would see that two things are very important here. That first thing is the simplicity of the tune. Second thing is the repetitiveness of the tune, that is in the bhajana paddhati you would have also heard, where you have multiple charanas coming in and all of them will be in the same kind of a tune. So where all these kind of the works before the pre-Trinity, where we see that the lyrics has played a predominant role and music seems to be like a, some kind of a clothing or something kind of a covering to bring out that lyrics in a beautiful form. But it was only in the time of the Trinity that a complete twist in the conceptualization of music itself came, in the sense that we see that the concept of art music came in. What I mean by art music is that where the lyrics was definitely important. Each one of them contributed very distinctly in terms of the lyrical aspects. But what is very important here is that the music which came along had a very valuable contribution. Of course, the music also indicates here the laya aspect, how the music and the laya were interwoven in different colors, different formats. This aspect of music is actually very abstract. So, to make it more concrete, I'd like to give you an example of probably painting as an art. If you compare that, probably you'll understand the contribution of the Trinity in a much more concrete manner, in the sense that suppose we have Tyagaraja, Dikshidhar and Shyama Sastri, and all of them were given probably the basic 7 colors, tools of the painting brush and a canvas. Then what happens is that suppose we tell each of them, you paint some topic of your own choice. So each one according to his own musical thought process. Here it's the thought process of the art of painting, where they would probably choose their own topics in terms of painting a picture. So each time now when the 3 of them have painted the picture, you would see that each would have painted on a different topic. This is what probably would equate to in terms of each one creating different ragas. Now it's the same topic given to the 3 people. Again, you will see that each one conceptualizes the same topic in their own inimitable way. So the same topic will give you 3 different pictures. That probably we could equate to how each of them created different pictures of the same Kambodhi, different pictures of the same Kalyani, Todi, Bhairavi, etc. Further down, coming a bit more, one singular person, you are giving him one particular topic and telling him that each time you have to paint something new and fresh within the same topic. So using his imaginary skills, what he would do is that, suppose I tell him, Obviously, if it's Trimurti, I would think of Tiruvarur. I say, give me a painting of Tiruvarur, and each time you have to create something new about Tiruvarur. So, using the imaginary process, what the particular artist would do is to create different dimensions of Tiruvarur that he conceives. So, this probably I would equate to how a singular artist has used a single ragam to create multiple dimensions. So, that's why we say that Tyagaraja created 29 kritis in Todi. So, if he created 29 kritis in Todi, do they all sound the same? No. Each one gives a different dimension of Todi. Each one gives a and even the Grahaswaram, the starting note, you see that for different compositions it's different. And some compositions you would see that they delve more in the Purvanga portion. Some of the compositions you see that in the higher sthai, the whole composition hovers. So there are different perspectives in which you see that each one of them have used their own paint, brush and canvas, I would say, in terms of creating beautiful musical imagery for us. Another very interesting thing is that, of course, they all lived as contemporaries in the same place. And yet they were able to create a distinct path for themselves because the musical path, the journey that they undertook were all very, very different. Today we are living in a world of copy and paste, where we see that anywhere and everywhere in the world, people are just copying things and claiming it to be theirs. But here within the small gamut of the Tiruvarur where they reign, and almost within 10-20 years of difference, all of them were there. But each one of them created a very, very distinct path in terms of music for us, and that's what makes them very, very great. In terms of if you look at it, first I would like to just list out some things which came to my mind to show that what is very, very unique about the Mummurtigal in terms of their musical contribution. We see that all of them use the kriti as the medium for their main communication of music. While we have different genres, like we have the Varnam, in that Tanavarnam, Padavarnam, then we have Ragamalika, Javali, Tillana, Kriti, Kirtana, like this. Many forms are there in our Carnatic music, but all the three of them, though they did create other forms, about which we'll talk about later, the Kriti was the main medium, Kriti, Kirtana, both of course, they are very, very, kind of very closely associated terms. They use this as the medium for the creation of their compositions and for their musical expression. And each one defined their own set of ragas to create kriti. This is very, very important, where apart from the time-tested ragas, like we have the Kalyani, Kambodi, Todi, Bhairavi, etc., they also used very traditional Rakti ragas, like Sahana, Ananda Bhairavi, Ahiri, Dhanyashi, Kedaragola, Yadukula Kambodi, etc. But then they also chose to be different in terms of creating new ragas for us, creating new dimensions, new vistas for us through their ragas. And as I said earlier also, within the particular ragam, each one has exploded to the zenith, I would say. They believed in the concept of beauty in simplicity on one end, I would say, and also saw to it that they explored the grandeur of the compositions as well. So, for example, suppose we say beauty in simplicity, I could probably relate it to the Utsava Sampradaya Kirtana, Divyanama Kirtana, and the smaller kind of compositions that Dikshadhara also attempted. For example, just to see a small kriti, Kirtana in Sahana that Tyagaraja created, for example, Shri Rama, Shri Rama, Shri Manoharama, Shri Rama, Shri Rama, Shri Manoharama, Yelara Nidaya, Intai Naradaya, Shri Rama, Shri Rama, Shri Manoharama, Chalada Sadaya, Samithaladaya Shri Rama Shri Rama Shri Manoharama Bhakta Kantudata Padmanethrudata Shri Rama Shri Rama Shri Manoharama Ragaviragita Tyagarajanuta Shri Rama Shri Rama Shri Manoharama. So here probably you're able to immediately relate to the composition irrespective of whether you knew Sahana or not, whether you knew the movements of Sahana or not. But the tune was so simply structured that probably everybody could sing along as well. On the other end, exploring the grandeur of our ragas, we see that the same Tyagaraja, for example, has created compositions like Chakaniraja Margamulundaka, where Sangati by Sangati, Sangati by Sangati explores Karahara Priya and makes it blossom. Or, for example, Yetavunara Nilakadaniku. Like this, we can keep going on and on. And also we see that they were traditional and innovative. That is something we all have to understand. Today we talk about innovation, creation and other things, and think that Tyagaraja, Dikshidhar and Shyama Sastri are very old timers, but they were not actually. They had a very strong rooted tradition, but yet they were so innovative and creative in their approach. And the innovation was rooted in tradition, and that is what gave value to it. Today we just kind of jam anything and everything together without knowing any of the system. We call off and say Jugalbandi of Hindustani and Carnatic. Neither do we know Hindustani properly nor Carnatic, and we try to jam up something. Then we bring in Western music. Then we use all kind of instruments and try to create something. But the point is about creating something very meaningful. That is very, very important in music. It's not just about creating something, but the end product should be meaningful. And there we see that, as I mentioned earlier also, while they created compositions in traditional ragas, they were very innovative. Like, for example, Tyagaraja created his own set of ragas like Chandrajyoti, Bahudhari, and many such, what we call as the Vinta ragas. There are about 70 ragas like that. Similarly, we see that Dikshidhar also created parallelly many ragas of his own creation, we can see. It's also most important thing which I would like to share, probably not thought of before also, about is how Dikshidhar and mainly Tyagaraja. Shyama Sastri is one class apart, I would say, in the terms of he has very limited compositions of about 60-70 compositions. And all of them are mostly in traditional ragas. You would know that he has created mainly in what we call as a Rakti ragam. He never went to or did any adventure in trying to create many permutation combinations like Tyagaraja did. So his compositions probably are devoted to ragas, as I said, like Kalyani, Bhairavi, Todi, Riti Gola, Ananda Bhairavi, Kedara Gola, Ahiri, and such ragas. Whereas Tyagaraja and Dikshidhar are very important here for us to understand how the same raga sounds different through the medium of a Tyagaraja Kriti and through the medium of a Dikshidhar Kriti is because of the two paths they followed in terms of understanding the concept of ragas. That we'll be talking about later also. And they created both Sahitya-oriented Kritis as well as Sangeeta-oriented Kritis. And in the Tala aspect, again, it's very important for us to understand where in earlier times you would have seen mostly Adi Talam, Rupakam, and from the folk music we have the Mishra Chapu, Kanda Chapu, all these kind of things have been a part of the earlier music. But the Mummurtigal were very great in terms of exploring the Tala aspects in terms of first is the Kala Pramana. That is, they use the singular Kala, the Rendigalai, and you see that there are so many types of compositions created. And then, of course, the Edupu is another important thing which Tyagaraja contributed in terms of in the Sama Edupu, Ara Edupu, Mukka Edupu, Vandra Edupu, like this, so many he has created different concepts. And here we also should understand the Oedip is not just about starting something off in half or three-fourths, but how the whole thing is structured internally in terms of that construction. That is also very important. We'll talk about it later. Of course, the themes for Tyagaraja, it was Rama. For Dikshidhar, it was all the gods and goddesses. And Shyama Sastri, his own Kamakshi, Bangaru Kamakshi, that he worshipped. And the language, again, all of them used Telugu, Sanskrit, and a mixture of this. For example, Tyagaraja used Telugu and Sanskrit. Dikshidhar's was absolutely scholarly Sanskrit, but we also see that as a process of innovation, I would say. That is, everywhere, they have, the innovation is never overdone. That we have to understand that. The innovation was kept within its limits, and that's what added beauty. So he created Manipravala Kriti, Venkatachalapati in Karnataka Kapi, where in Dikshidhar has used Tamil, Telugu and Sanskrit as part of the composition. Just one sample he has given us. Tyagaraja also in many compositions you would see that the Sanskrit flows into Telugu, the Telugu flows into Tamil, Sanskrit flows into Telugu. But the point here again is how you never realize that one flows into the other. That is the beauty. It's not that now I started in Sanskrit, now somehow I have to add some Telugu words to it and make a composition, That's not how it works. It naturally flows one into the other, especially the compositions like the Venkatachalapati, where I was saying that three languages is coming. Unless you listen to it very intently, you would never even know that one is going into the other language. So that is where I think the greatness of these great Vagekara lies. And of course, in the composition, you see the way they were well scholarly, even in terms of the grammar of music, not only music, but the grammar of the Sahitya, where the prasa, the yati, so many beautiful aspects related to the prosodical aspects were actually explored by them. And of course, they also, apart from the fact that they were used the Kriti as the medium, we see that each one distinctly carved a place for themselves. Like, for example, when we think of Tyagaraja, his unique contribution is the Pancharatnam. If you think about Dikshidhar, probably it is his Navagraha Kritis and the Chaturdasa Malika, Raga Malika and other Raga Malikas. If you think about Shyama Sastri, immediately the monumental contribution which comes to our mind is his three Swarajatis in Todi, Bhairavi and Yadukula Kambodi. We'll just try to look a bit more deeper into each one distinctly now to see how they have contributed individually towards Carnatic music in their own unique way. As I said, all of them flourished during the same period. And again, many unique things have happened in their life in terms of how one guru came in the form of different guises. For example, you see that Tyagaraja, Narada came in the guise of a guru and handed over the Swararnavam to him. Swararnavam is one of the greatest treatise on music, which gives you all the intricacies about the musical elements which were given to him. For Dikshidhar also the same, Chidambara Yogi came, like that for Shyama Sastri. So we see that the divine intervention has been there in the case of all the three of them in terms of how they were led to the path of composing and becoming a Vagekara. And we see that for all of them, music was Nadopasana. And they never, went into Narastuti. That is, they never went into praising anybody at any point of time. And moksha sadhana was their ultimate goal. Tyagaraja, we see, here again, this point I'm drawing attention to you for the fact that how we will look into a few practical examples to see how Tyagaraja and Dikshidhar have been parallelly existent, and but how each one of them have used their own methodology in terms of creating the ragas. Here I had also made a statement some time back. It just came to me that for Tyagaraja, it was the permutation combination of the swaras that created new ragas, whereas for Dikshidhar, it is the space between the swaras that created the ragas. This is a very, very subtle statement, but I would like to make it more clear through some examples, which means that probably for Tyagarajar, for example, if you take a ragam like Karahara Priya, in that he used different permutation combinations, probably by omitting one swaram, the Ri, one raga was created. By omitting the Ga, another raga was created. By omitting the Dha, another raga was created. Or while going, some swaras were omitted. While coming, some swaras were omitted. Like this, different kinds of permutation combination led to the creation of ragas by Tyagarajar. But in the case of Dikshadhar, we see that it's a much more complex system of creation of ragas. That is why some of the ragas that he created are very, very difficult for us to even kind of comprehend as to what it is. We try to roughly equate and say that, okay, Charukesi of Tyagarajar is Tarangini of Dikshadhar and all. But it is not like that. Because the way he has structured the ragam in his Raganga raga pattern is that he has used more of murchanas, and he has concentrated more on the Amsaswaras, the Vadi, Samvadi, etc. And for those who are not aware, the two systems, one is the Asampurna Mela Paddhati that Dikshadhar adopted, and the Tyagarajar adopted the Sampurna Mela Paddhati of Govindacharya, whereas Dikshadhar used the Venkatamaki's Asampurna Mela Paddhati. To put it very simply, what is the Asampurna Mela Paddhati is a scheme where you see that the Asampurna doesn't mean that there are some missing notes. It doesn't mean like that. It's just that they don't follow the straightforward movement of Sarigama Padanisa and Sanidapa Magarisa, but you'll have the permutation combination in a zigzag manner. That is the first thing. But it is Sampurna in the context that when you add the swaras happening in the Arohana and Avarohana, together there should be 7 swaras. That is what is the Asampurna Mela Paddhati, where, suppose for example, I have Sagama Padanisa. You would already seen that Ri is not there. But if I say Sanidapa Magarisa, then in totality you see that all the 7 swaras are there. So in that case, you see that according to him, it is a Mela, according to Dikshadhar. Thus, for bringing out the raga, the characteristic prayoga with Vakra and Varjya Sancharas freely used by Muthuswami Dikshadhar than some kind of a straight progression. I'll just look into one composition now to show you how the same ragam, a very popular and favorite ragam of ours, Charukesi, which is the 26th Melakarta according to Tyagarajar, and the same is known in the Asampurna Mela Paddhati as Tarangini. But we cannot just ad hoc and say that, oh, Charukesi is only Tarangini. It's not like that, because of the Sancharas, because of the way in which he has used the swaras, makes for all the difference. Just we'll listen to a few lines of Adamudi Galade. Of course, we all know the composition, but in the context of the straightforward movement of notes, let's see how it works. Adamodi galade ramaya matala adamodi galade ramaya matala adamodi galade ramaya matala adamodi Galade Ramaya Matalad Bodi Galade Ramaya Matalad Bodi Galade Ramaya Matalad Modi Galade, where Charukesi in a very straightforward way. In fact, Tyagarajar is also very popular because of the fact that he adopted a straight path. So something which is very straight and easy is always adopted by everyone. Whereas Dikshadhar adopted a more, I would say, rugged and a kind of, vakra path. So that is something which is not very easily followable, I would say. Here, very simply, Sarigama Padanisa Sanidapa Magarisa. So the composition also follows this straight approach of Sarigama Pamagare Gama Padanida Pamagare Gama Padanisa Rigamagare Sanida Gari Sanida Risanida Pa Sanida Pamaga Rigama Pamagari Gamagari Gari Sanisa Danisa. No complication at all. Now the same scale, when it becomes Tarangini in Dikshidhar school, I'll just explain to you a bit of the ragam so that when we are listening to the composition, you look at it from that perspective and not wonder, what am I singing? Okay. So, here again it is a Sampurna ragam in the sense, as I said, when you combine the Arohanam and Avarohanam together, it has got all the 7 notes. But the Murchana Arohana is Sari ga pa dha ni da pa da sa sa da pa ga re sari ga ma ga re sa. So you'd see that there is a zigzag movement here, and also you'd see that here the combination of Sari, Gapa, Dha, Ni, Da, Pa, Da, Sa. That is how the movement happens. It's not Sari, Ga, Ma, Pa, Da, Ni, Sa, Sa, Ni, Da, Pa, Ba, Ga, Re, Sa. That is not the path that Dikshidhar takes. So the composition also, you see here, how it revolves around this particular structuring of Tarangini that he has done. Ma, ye, Tvam yahi. It is the same notes, but see how it is structured differently. Ma ye Tvam yahi. Mam padhi tum kahi ma ye Tvam yahi. Mam badhi tum kahi ma ye Tvam yahi. Dhyaye dhyaye Tvamehi mudam dehi mam pahi ma ye Tvam yahi. Gaye gaye yahi kahi yehi dehi pahi ma ye Tvam yahi. Upaye peye sarasakaye rasakaye sakaye aye maye Tvam yahi. Samudaye Guru Guhadaye Sudha Tarangini Antarangini. And after that he gives a Chittaswaram also we see in the Sangeeta Sampradaya Pradarshini to make it more explicit as to what is the moment of the ragam. Ma magari sariga magagari sari sa da pa da ni da pa da sa ri ga da pa da ni da pa da sa ri ga magari sa da pa ga ri sa ri ga ma ye Tvam yahi. This is again a very unique composition, a very rare composition of Dikshidhar. unique in terms of the theme also, where you would have seen Maye Tvam Yahi Mambadi Tum Kahi, where he's usually you see he talks to gods and goddesses. Here he is talking to Maya and telling her, please leave me and go away. So it's a very beautiful composition. After that, he talks about the beauty of the Devi. And here again, we see that how he has conceptualized the same scale in his own imitable way. And that is what makes Dikshitar's compositions very, very unique. We look at another example of Maya Malagola. In Maya Malagola, Dikshitar has also created many janyas. In fact, the maximum janyas created by Dikshitar are in Maya Malagola. Tyagaraja has also composed in janyas of Maya Malagola. Again, the same simple, straightforward structure that he has used makes it very simple listening also, I would say, for Tyagaraja. A very common derivative of Maya Malagola. First, let's look at Maya Malagola. Sa ri ga ma pa da ni sa sa ni da pa ma ga ri sa. Of course, in this Maya Malagola, Tyagaraja has also composed quite a few compositions, and we know of the monumental composition of Dikshitar. Srinatadi Guru Guha Jayati Jayati. Shama Sastri has composed in janyas of Maya Malagola, but he did not compose in Maya Malagola. Why? I really don't know, but that is it. And coming back to Tyagaraja, Sagama Padanisa Sani Pabagarisa Sagama Panisa Sani Pabagarisa Jagan Mohini, where you would see the clear cut again, the structure. Shobillo Saptaswara Shobillo Saptaswara Shobillo Saptaswara Shobillo Saptaswara Shobillo Saptaswara Shobillo Saptaswara Sundarula Bajupave Manasa Shobillo Saptaswara. And the Chittaswaram, which is composed, of course, this was not composed by Tyagaraja, it was a later Shishya Parampara that composed. But nevertheless, it gives us a more explicit understanding of the whole movement, like sa sa pa ni sa ni pa ma ga ri sa ni sa sa ma ga pa ma ni pa sa ni ga ri sa ga ma pa ni sa ba sa ni pa ma ni pa ma ga ma pa sa pa ma ga ri sa ma ga ri sa ni pa ma ga ri sa ga ma pa ni sa ni pa ma ga ri sa ni pa ni sa ga ri sa ma ga ri pa ma ni pa ma ga ri sa ni pa ma ga ri sa ni pa ni sa ga ma pa ni sa ni pa ni sa ga ri sa ma ga ri sa ni pa ni sa ga ri sa ma ga ri sa ga ma ni ma pa sa ni pa ma ni sa ga ri sa ga ma Pani Shobillo Saptaswara Sundarula Bajupave Manasa Shobillo Saptaswara. Where you saw that this was the Chittaswaram was composed actually by Karakudi Sambashiva here, not Tyagaraja. Like this, some of the Chittaswarams that you see in many of the Tyagaraja compositions are composed by many Shishya Parampara people coming under that. But what is very special again here is that how the Shishyas have thought in the same thought process of the creator, that is Tyagaraja, so that the Chittaswaram blends seamlessly into the particular composition. Like in GNB also we see that in Vararagalaya Senji Kambudi that he created the Chittaswaram, where you would never know that it is not Tyagaraja and somebody else who's added it to it. And that's again the genius of the later composer to be able to what we call as, getting into the shoes, we say generally in a general term. So trying to get into the thought process of that original composer and trying to create something very seamless along with it so that you don't see the difference between the two. In fact, many people would think that this particular swaram was created by Tyagaraja, but nevertheless it is not. Coming to Dikshitar, that's the same Maya Malagola. I'd just like to sing 2 lines of a composition for you in the Ragam Devaranji that was created by Dikshitar. A very small composition, but see the movements how it is never in line with like sa re ga ma pa da ni sa ni da pa ma ga ri sa, which he faithfully followed while doing Maya Malagola, where you every student, every Rasika knows that he started or like Sa Srinatadi Guru Gu Jayati Jayati Sari Gama Padani Sani Dabagari Sari. This is the movement of the melodic structure where he used the Arona itself as a first line to create the first composition. This composition itself warrants a full lecture demonstration. That kind of stuff is there in this, but we'll not go into that now. But the point is about how in the krama way he has used. And you have to also understand that all the time-tested ragas, he never touched anything. Like a Kambodi or Kalyani, he did not try to do anything vakra or something different. He kept them intact, but what he created, he tried to make it afresh and anew. Here again, Devaranji, you see, Namaste Paradevate Shivayuvate Kamakshi Pamasa. This is the way he conceived the Avarona. Namaste Paradevate Shivayuvate Kamakshi. Namaste, Namaste. So, a different way of looking at it. And in the Anupallavi also, you would see the similar structure. Just I wanted to share that with you here. Another important, in fact, a very, very important aspect which we have to understand in the creation of Vivadi Ragas. That is, the conceptualization itself of the Vivadi Ragas by Dikshidhar and Tyagarajar have been totally different. Now, if you take the Vagadishwari, for example, Vivadi Ragam, we see that Tyagarajar has again adopted, as I said, the Sampurna Mela Paddhati, so it will be like Sari Gama Padani Sa Sani Dapa Magari Sa. Vagadishwari, all of you are very familiar with the composition, Paramatmudu Velike. So, Sari Gama Padani Sa Sani Dapa Magari Sa. So, where the krama Pamagari Padani Dapa Magari Sari Gama Padani Sani Dapa Magari Sa. In a straight way he uses like Paramatmudu Velike Muja Taga Paramatmudu Velike Mujata. Where you would have observed Sari Gama Padani Sani. It progresses in the same linear way that the scale itself flows. Whereas our Dikshidhar, he creates the Ragam Chaya Nata, which is also known as Bhoga Chaya Nata because of the addition of the Bhoga to fit into the Kadapayadi formula that we all know of. So but he starts nevertheless the composition itself as Bhoga Chaya Nataka Priye. See how he has conceived this same Vagadishwari. Very important for us to understand is that while this is a very simple theory but must be understood in the context in the light of the compositions of both to understand and appreciate the two. In the sense that in Tyagarajar you see Sari Gama Pa, the Vivadi notes occur in succession. There is no Vakratva here. But Dikshidhar, in his school you would see that all these kind of Vivadi Ragas, most of them you would see that they will not occur in succession as Sari Ga, or suppose you have Padani, somewhere you have, he will never use Padani. It's like Padani Dasa or something like that. where the two Vivadi notes will not come in quick succession. Like that, you will see that that is one common theory that he has followed. And here, of course, in this particular Bhoga Chhaya Nata, which is akin to the Vagadishwari, the construction itself is so different and beautiful that sometimes you may be wondering what it is all about. Like, Bhoga Chhaya Nataka Priya, where Gamari, it will come like that, but Pamagari is seldom used by him. Like, so, Bhoga, Saga, Sama. See how the Vadi, Samvadi, all this is working in his mind. Bhoga Chhaya Nataka Priye Bodham Dehi Brigadisha Jaye Bhoga Chhaya Nataka Priye Bodham Dehi Brigadisha Jaye. In the Anupalli again, Sri Guru Gugha Jana Nini Sa. So here, just to give you an idea of what his conceptualization of Bhoga Chhaya Nata is. This is actually a very old ragam, and we find the mention of this in Raga Lakshanamu and Saramrita and such works, and later on in Sangeeta Sampradaya Pradarshani also we see that Subbarama Dikshidhar makes a mention of this Bhoga Chhaya Nata, where Sari Gari Gama Pa Nini Sa. The Nini Sa is a peculiar phrase which he uses in Bhoga Chhaya Nata. Sa Ni Da Ni Pa Mari Sa. So Dha Varjya in the Arohanam, and Da and Ga become Vakra in the Avarohanam. Even in a composition, for example, I could go to the other extreme of his handling of Kalavati, where you see that Sari Ga Ma Pada Ni Sa. We call it as Yagapriya in the Tyagaraja school. Sa Ni Da Pa Magari Sa. But Padani, another Vivadi pair, where he will never use that combination in succession. Kalavati Kamala Sanayuvati Kalyano Kalayato Saraswati. So in that composition also you'll see how the Vakra way in which he has used the Vivadi so that they don't come in quick succession. That was his aesthetics of presenting the Vivadi notes. Whereas the Tyagaraja's aesthetics, again each one has got their own beautiful aesthetics. For Tyagaraja, putting them in succession one after the other was the aesthetic beauty. Whereas for Dikshidhar, I would say in the Vivadi Ragams, to put them in a zigzag manner so that they don't come one after the other seems to be the aesthetics of his way of looking at Vivadi Ragas. I'll be jumping a bit back and forth because just I wanted to share some significant aspects of the Trinity. One major thing which we all know about Dikshidhar is his stay in Varanasi, which had a lot of influence in terms of the Hindustani musical aspects creeping into his music. And in this context, we see that he has adopted ragas like Hamir Kalyani, Yamuna Kalyani, Dvajavanti, Ramakali, and so on. Here again, if we closely examine all these Hindustani ragas, we could say that he only adapted it. He did not adopt it in verbatim, because each of these ragas, the Lakshana and other things are, in the scale may be the same, but the way of the Vadi, Samvadi, everything is quite different in the Hindustani compared to our Carnatic music. But he beautifully brought in all these Hindustani ragas into our Carnatic music and made it our very own. And that is the speciality of Dikshidhar. In this context, I would also like to bring in parallelly Tyagaraja, where I would use the word Carnaticized. It may be a new word, but Carnaticized in the sense that the same Yamuna Kalyani that Dikshadhar has used, you would see a different color that he has brought in, where you would think that it is part of our Carnatic music and nothing new. Yamuna Kalyani doesn't sound anything different. For example, if you take the composition, Narayana Hari, Narayana Hari, Narayana Hari, Narayana, Narayana Hari, Narayana Hari, Narayana Hari, Narayana, Nashwaramaina Dhanashvamu Larune Vishwasilcha Bhuteshwara Hari Hari, Narayana Hari, Narayana Hari, Narayana Hari, Narayana, Naju Pulumi, Naju Kutanamune Judani, Tyagarajulla Malaru, Narayana Hari, Narayana Hari, Narayana Hari, Narayana. Here too the different color by Dikshadhar, the different color in terms of the Murchanas, different color in terms of the Kala Pramana, everything, and the Jaru, everything makes for a different listening. Amrita bodham de hi jambu where you saw that he has used some phrases like Dani pa ma pa. So more in a plain way, first thing, as a just common rasika itself, I'm sure you can infer that it was much more plain in terms of the gamakam. Plain in the sense of using more jaru. Jaru means the glides, whereas in Tyagarajar you found that more of the kampitam being predominant, and that's why you see that it has got a different flavor. Similarly, he adopted Dvajavanti, where you would see compositions like Akhilande Shwari Raksha Mam. In this context, I will share a fairly rarely heard ragam Ramakali. In fact, I was looking through to see, because Sangeeta Sampradaya Pradarshani itself says that this is a North Indian raga which has been adopted by Muthuswami Dikshadhar into our own system. But let me also caution you that his father, Ramaswamy Dikshadhar, was a greater composer. It's just that we don't know much about him. He composed the 108 Raga Tala Malika, where sadly we only have 62 available, the rest is not available to us. In that, Ramakali also comes as one of the Ragamalika swaras there. But a full composition in this Ramakali, we could probably attribute to our Dikshadhar. If you look at the Hindustani version of this particular Ramakali, it goes like, again here, the same scale has been used by Dikshadhar, but you see that the Vadi, Samvadi, there are differences in terms of his perception of it. I'll give you the first, the Arona Arona as seen in the Hindustani mode, like this again is a derivative of Mayamalagola here, or the Bhairav That you would call in the Hindustani music, where Sari ga ma pada ni sa sa ni da pa ma ga ri sa. This is the basic scale. But in the Hindustani mode, how does this Ramakali sound? Sa ga ma pa dha ni sa sa ni dha pa ma pa dha ni dha pa ga ma re sa. I repeat again for your understanding, where there are two bhashanga notes happening here. One is the pratimadhyamam. The second is, instead of the kakali nishadam, the kaisiki nishadam need to also comes in this particular phrase, like sa ga ma pa da ni sa. This is intact. Sa ni dha pa. The Bhairavanga is intact. Now the Ramakali portion. Ma pa dha ni dha pa ga ma re sa. Where the composition, again very small composition but very beautiful nevertheless. Rama Rama Kali Kalusha Virama Dhara Brilla Lama Rama Rama Kali Kalusha Virama Dhara Brilla Lama Rama Rama Shri Mahija Kama Suguna Dharma Paradharma Shama Shri Mahija Kama Suguna Dharma Paradharma Shama Mama Shiva Guru Goga Sutrama Vibhuta Vinota Nama Dhapa Maga Gapadani Dapa Maga Dapa Maga Dapa Maga Pamaga Magariga Dapa Ga Magarisa Nidasa Rega Paga Dhapa Ganidapa Magapa Dasasa Garisa Nida Risa Nidapa Maga Sanidapa Magariga Rama Rama Kali Kalusha Virama. Thank you. Here, I would like to draw your attention to the fact about how, though he used Ramakali, he has got a different definition, I would say, in terms of the Vadi Samvadi, where in the Hindustani mode, you see, Sa ni dha pa ma pa da ni da pa. Then the Gama Risa becomes one unit. Gama re sa ga ga ga. We don't use that as a halting note. Whereas in this swaram, Chitta Swaram, where you saw, you would clearly have seen that da pa ma ga. So how he gives a different color to the Ramakali in his own imitable way can be seen here. But this, very interestingly, this halting on the Gandharam that he does in the Chitta Swaram is not to be found in the text. That is the melodic portion of the composition. You see that it probably adheres much to the grammar of Ramakali itself. But a slight twist here he gives in terms of the Chitta Swaram, where he ends all the Swarams on the Ga and gives you different dimensions. So listen a bit more closely. And here, of course, an appeal to everybody that we have to listen in a very leisurely manner to these compositions. Today, in fact, we were looking at all these reels where everybody is vying with one another in terms of, if I can do so much BPM of swaras, and I increase, one does 130, once I can do 140, I can do 150. So now it's like, rattling out swaras one after the other, how fast I can do. But I think the value of our music lies more in terms of the relaxed gait, both for the singer as well as for the listener, in terms of delving deep into it. If you want to make it big and vast, just like that, without any meaning, you can do anything. But to give it that sense of meaning, I think that slowness actually, and in fact, even in daily life now, we are so much into our fast kind of life where we just grab a pizza or a burger and just keep going like that. But I'm sure that all of you will agree with me that you definitely look forward to the Kalyanams, where you have that Ela Sapadu with that all that elaborate things, put together in a beautifully decorated manner, and you're able to savor each one. And our way of the traditional, that is where the tradition is, where you can get to savor right from the sweet to the sour to the spicy to everything, everything is there in that Vara Ele that is served to us. So it's like that. I would think our great Trinity's compositions are such that where you will be able to get a flavor of everything in that, and not just a bite like you do in a burger or a pizza. That just tastes and then it goes. But here, even after you, in fact, sometimes when the catering and the cooking is very good, years after also you recall that and say, oh, Anta Kalyanathil and the Sapadu was so great. So like that, we have to really savor these compositions in all its leisure. That leisure of time the artist has to give, that leisure of time the Rasika has also to give in terms of attaining that bliss, because entertainment and some kind of, fun that we have is one level. But that enlightenment and enrichment is what that is everlasting, and that is what these compositions share here. So here again, coming back to our Dikshadhar, how he gives the beautiful Chitta Swaram, see how every note ends on the Gandhara from different points. Da pa ma ga, ga pa da ni da da pa ma ga. Da pa pa ma ga, da pa ma ga, re ga. Then da pa, eschewing the ma. Da pa ga, ma ga re sa, ni da sa, re ga pa ga da. From ga dha, ga dha pa. Then from ga ni. Gani dha pa ma ga. So where he jumps, gadha, gani, then ga pa da sa sa, ga re sa ni da pa, in combination with the Pratimadhima now. Re sa ni da pa ma ga, sa ni da pa ma ga re ga. So many gas in so many colors, so many hues. So these are the kind of things that we really need to look deep into to understand and relish. Now, another one interesting aspect of Dikshadhar which I want to share is, he was well versed in understanding the same ragam in the two systems very well. Immediately what ragam comes to your mind? Hindolam. So where Hindolam, with its typical Kampita Gamakams in the Carnatic style, To the Jaru kind of approach, both he has handled and shown us that, yes, I'm aware of both the systems. It's not that I only know the Malkams of the Hindustani or just that I know the Hindulam of the Carnatic. For example, if you take his composition, Govardhana Girisham Smarami Anisham Gopikadi Manokaram Garvitakam Sadiharam Gova. Where you will see that in this Gamadani Sanida Bagamadama Gaza Mama Gagada Mamani Nida Sanini Sagani Sanani Mada Gamadani Sanida Bagamadama Gamagaza. The typical kind of Kampita Gamakam, which is so much the core of our Carnatic music, and parallelly Tyagaraja also you would have remembered Samajavaragamana, where all of them use the Kampita Gamakam. Now, the same Sagamadani sa Sanidamagasa. The same thing were to be used in the Hindustani mode. First thing, in the Dhrupad style, of course, we cannot go this fast. The Dhrupad itself is a slow form, exploring the nuances of the ragam in its deepest sense. And of course, the prayogas are also different, then the Jaru is different. So how does it go? Sagama Dhani Sa Sani Dhama Gama Gasa Jakshi Kamakshi Nirada Chikore Tripure Nirajakshi Kamakshi. Even the Anupallavi. Sharada Rama Nayane. So where you saw Gama Gasa Nesada Ni Sagama. Where, if you look probably to look into Dhrupad or a similar kind of a construction in the Bada Khyal or whatever in the Hindustani mode, the thought process in terms of the musical idea, the musical movements, you can see similar, like for example, Paga Laganare Mahara Ajakumar Ganade. So probably this kind of influence of the movements of Magama Sani Sadani comes from the Hindustani mode. Here again, I would also like to draw a parallel between Tyagaraja and Dikshidhar in terms of using the same raga again, as I mentioned, in the conceptualization as a Carnatic ragam, as a conceptualization as a Hindustani version in terms of using more Jaru. Here I am referring to the ragam Shubha Panturali, which is known as the Shiva Panturali in the Dikshidhar school. Tyagaraja has used more of the Kampita Gamakam, so he gives it a different flavor. Whereas Dikshidhar, the same scale he uses, but he uses a lot of jaru. So you would see that a different kind of a color is obtained by the same ragam through his composition. So here, sa re ga ma pa da ni sa sa ni dha pa ma ga re sa. Tyagarajar, என்னாளோ யோரகே யுந்து வாஜூத மூ என்னாளோ ஓரகே யுந்து வாஜூத மூயவரு அடிகேவரு லேத Shiramayannalu yorage. So if you translate this into swaras, using the Kampita Gamakam, he has created Padapama Padapama Gamada Dadapama Padanini Dabama Ma Padapama Pama Dadapama Pamanini Dabama Gama Padanizani Dabama Padapama Padama Padama Pama Dadapama Gagamama Gaganini Dadani Padama Manidani Padama Padama Pama Gama Padanini Sarika Garirizani Sarika Garirizani Sarini Sadani Padama Ma Padanizani Dabama Padanini Dabama Gama Pama Garisa. This is the way of approach of Tyagaraja. The same thing. Ga ma dha ma ga re ga ma dha ni dha pa ma ga ga ma dha ni re ni dha ma ga ga ma dha ma ga re ma ga re sa shri Satya Narayanam Upasmahe Nityam Satya Jnana Nandamayam Sarvam Vishnumayam Anupallavi. Vasavadi pujitam varamunigana bhavitam dasajana paripalitam masamana bhadari sitam. Where you see that the same notes, but how, and also here two things. One is the jaru, and also we see that the Panchama Varjya kind of phrases lend scope for that jaru to become more predominant, like, or the Shadjama Varjya phrases ga ma dha ma ni da ni da ma ga ga dha ma ga re ma ga re ne re sa ne re ga ma ga ma dha da ma da ni da ma ga re ga ma dha ni da ni re ni dha ma ga re ga ma dha ma ga re ma ga re ne re sa. So this movement he has adopted in his composition. Nevertheless, it's only sa re ga ma pa da ni sa sa ni da pa ma ga re sa. So see how the same thing can be used so beautifully by two people to create two different structures for us. Here, I would also like to go a bit further away from the Trinity in terms of showing you how one great composer can inspire another great composer. Here I am talking about Sri Rabindranath Tagore. It is not about copying. Remember, it is about inspiring one by the other. Rabindranath Tagore, we know he was the creator of the Rabindra Sangeet that we all know, a corpus compositions that he created. And this Meenakshi Memudam composition in Gamaga Kriya is something which inspired our Rabindranath Tagore to compose a composition on a similar line. Here we see that how this exchange of ideas among the great people happens. There is a big story which, to cut short, Savitri, who was there at Kalakshetra at one time, when she was a student, the Tagore happened to hear this particular Meenakshi Memudam being sung by her. And later she got the opportunity to come to Shantiniketan and stay there for a while. And at that time, Tagore again asked us to sing this particular composition, Meenakshi Memudam. And while she was singing, he got inspired to create a Rabindra Sangeet of his own. And this composition that he did was on the theme of spring. There, for him in Rabindra Sangeet, we have what we call as the different porjoy, what we call as the classifications. So in that, the Prakriti means the nature. In that, he brings out the classification of the spring there. So he calls it also Bashanto Pancham. That is the name of the ragam he has given. I'll just sing you just 2 lines of Meenakshi Memudam and show parallelly how he has been inspired to create his own composition. And also in this, some beautiful words which he found, like Madhumata Modita Hridaya, which we have in our Meenakshi Memudam, that in the context of this particular composition also he is used very beautifully. Meenakshi Memudam, all of you would have heard, but still just 2 lines just to transcend from there to the Bengali composition. Again, here we must understand that this particular composition employs all the kind of jarus. Unlike the many other compositions of Purvi Kalyani created by Gamaga Kriya, created by Dikshit, where the Panchamam is predominant and the Kampita Gamakam is very predominant, but this is a different kind of color he has given to Gamaga Kriya, like Meenakshi me mudam dehi me nakshi me mudam dehi me kangi Raja Matangi. A slow gait with a lot of jarus. So similarly, Tagore. Ba Shanti He Bhubano Mohini Diko Prante Bano Banante Shamo Prantore Amro Chai. He uses the Shuddha Devata here. Sharo Baro Tire Nodini Re. Then the Madhyama Kalam has influenced him. Nilo Akashe Maloyo Batashe Bapilo Ananto Tabo Madhuri Basho Where in the Charanam, he also uses, as I said, Madhumata Modita Hridaya Hridaya. Modhumato Modito Hridaye Hridaye Re Modhumato Modito Hridaye Hridaye Nabo Prano Uchchoshilo Aji বিচলিত চিত উছলি রে উন্মাদন ঝন ঝন ঝনিল মঞ্জিরে মঞ্জিরে বাস হো where you saw that the great Vagekara, he inspired another Vagekara at a very later period actually. So this inspiration again, as I said, has to be something very seamlessly happening. It's not that I lift from there like many people do for the thesis today, where they lift and copy and lift and just put across and cut and paste everything and create PhD theses. It's not like that. But where you get inspired, you draw inspiration from that, and then you try to create your own structure with it such that everything blends seamlessly. Two more points I would like to just make a mention in the context of Shyama Shastri, Dekshadhar and Tyagarajar. Why did they become such great composers? We have had so many composers before them, so many composers after them. Of course, after them, we could say that they have all followed the footsteps of these great Mumurtigal in one way or the other. Nobody can deny that and say that I just came out of the blue and created something which nobody in the Trinity has created. Nobody can ever say that. Because all that which seeps in through their values that seeps into us is what is reflected even the composers who have come later. But what is very, very important is something for you to observe. They not only understood the music in its entirety, they not only understood the ragas in its depth, they not only understood the notes in the depth, but they also understood the tones in their deepest manner. This understanding of the tone is what we call as a nada. Understanding of the nada is what has made their music very, very exquisite and very, very beautiful. Here, I would like to just give you some explicit example. If I sing in terms of a composition, probably it may not be very visible, so I'm just singing to you one or two passages from the Varali Pancharatnam. And to show you three contrasts I've taken. One is the Shuddha Gandharam, then the Sadharana Gandharam, then the Antara Gandharam, three sets. So Varali uses the Shuddha Gandharam, but the Swara passages are an enlightenment in terms of how the same Gandhara again can be used in different dimensions and colors according to the context in which it appears. For example, all of us would have heard the Kanakana Ruchira so many times, but now look at it from this perspective, you'll find it a very delightful experience. Ga ga ma pa da ni da pa ma ga ga. Listen to the different tones of the Gandhara that appear in each context. It's the same Shuddha Gandhara, but each time you see how intently, if you listen, you can find the shades of the Gandhara coming in different contexts. Ga ga ma pa da ni da pa ma ga ga ri ni sa ni ga ri ga ma pa da ba ma. When it occurs as janta, ga ga ma pa da ni sa, same janta in the tarasthai. Ga as a dhirga, ga 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 ri sa ni da pa da. Or similarly in the next swaram also, sa sa ni da pa ma ga re sa ni da ni sa re sa ni ga re sa. Then again da ma ga ga re sa sa ni sa ga re ga ma ni da ma ga re. Sorry. Ni da ma ga re sa ni da pa ma ga ga re ga re sa re ga re sa ni re sa re ni da ni pa da ma pa da pa ma ga re sa re ga re sa. So many shades of the Gandhara is explored. Or in another one you see pa ma ga da pa ma ga ni da pa ma ga. Like this, you see that the same Gandharam, according to the combination of notes, how he explores. Here I would like to give an example of Dikshadhar, where in a different context of the Chaturdasha Ragamalika, where Chaturdasha Ragamalika, all of us know, is a composition of Dikshadhar in the 14 ragas. And in the first section, you see that after Pallavi, Anupallavi and Charanam is there. In the Anupallavi section, I just was going through, I saw that all the 6 ragas that he has used have the Gandhara as a part of the scale. So different kind of Gandharas, the Shruti values, you listen now and also keep guessing what is the ragam. I'm going to just sing only half avartan of each one. You can guess the ragam, but also make a note of how intelligently a Gandharam can be used in so many ragas, in so many contexts, in so many colors. Shri Vishwa Nayatam Bhajeham Ni sa re ma pa ni sa re sa pa ni sa re sa sa ni pa da ni pa ma re ga re sa. So the first itself you see in Sri Ragam re ga re sa, one shade. Going through the whole Chaturdasha will take a lot of time, so I'm just singing the Viloma Chittaswaram in the first passage for you to see how in different ragams the Gandhara is used, like Paga, Paga. I'm not singing the Sahityam, only the Swaram part. Paga, da da pa, da re sa, ka re sa pa, da ga mohana karalingam. After this, the Viloma Swaras come like da pa da ga pa ga pa re sa da sa mohanam. Re ga ma re sa ni sa re ma pa ni pa gaula. Again the Gandhara you see re ga ma re sa ni sa, the Gandhara. Then ma re sa ni pa ma ga ma pa ni ba sa ni nata. Then re ga re sa ni ni sa re ni re re Gauri. Sa ni da pa ma ga re ma pa da sa sa, the Arabiga. Then ga re sa sa ni pa pa ma re ga re sa ni pa ni sa shri. So the Gandhara being the pivotal point, how he uses is very interesting. Similarly in Shyama Sastri, the Bhairavi Swarajatis are an ocean of revelation, I would say. Everybody knows that the Bhairavi Swarajati he created in the Arona Krama, that the first Swaram is on Sa, second on Re. That's all fine. But what is the purpose of this? The larger purpose of making it in the Arona Krama, if you dwell deep into it, you will see that how they have looked not only at the notes, but the tones which go with each note in relation to the other note is what makes it very interesting. We'll just look at a few swaras to see that. First, of course, he starts off on the Mandrasthai, giving Bhairavi a very distinct color. We'll not go into the detail because Again, this is another big area of study. But the swaram, first swaram, you may be knowing the Swarajati, but look at it from this perspective, you will find it very interesting. Sari. Again, I will make a mention before that he does not grab all the swaras all at a time and then tries to create something. It is more like about the unfolding of a beautiful flower, I would say, where gradually from one note to the next, one note to the next, he tries to, kind of bring in, encompassing one note after the other and then creating this beautiful edifice for us. Like, Sari, first swaram, I'm not singing the Sahityam. Sari, ni, sari, ni, re, sa, ni, da, pa, ma, pa, da, ni, sari, sari, ni, sari, where he does not go beyond the re to the Gandhara. So the usage of the re in the context of sa, ni, you would see again sa, ri, ni, sa, ri, ni, re, sa, ni, da, pa, ma, pa, da, ni, sa, ri. Now he encompasses the Gandhara. See how the color of the re will change now. Re ga sa, ni ga ri sa ri, ni re sa ni da, ni ga ri. So when the ga comes into the fold, the re again adorns a different color. The third swaram, now the Gandhara is trying to get itself attached to the ma, the next note, and it tries to create its own color. Ga ma ga ri sa ri ni sa re ga ma pa ga ri ga ma pa da ma ga ri sa. See how many colors of the Gandhara you're able to see here. Ga, when you are giving that gamagam and pushing it up, ga ma ga ri sa ri ni sa re ga ma pa ga ri ga ma pa da ma ga ri sa ni ga ri ga ma. Now you're pushing the ga to the ma, and now the ma has to go to the ni. So ga ma pa da ni da pa. Again the ni attains a lesser Shruti value because it is not going to go up. Ni da pa. The next ma pa, a slight kind of what we call as a vibrato on that ma. It's not a straight ma. Ma pa ni da ma. From da, ni da ma, eschewing the pa. Ma. So every phrase serves a purpose. That is what I want to say. It's not just some composition of a Swarajati, Sarigama, Padani we talk about. Ma pa ni da ma pa da pa ma. So ni da ma, the ma in the absence of the pa, how it sounds. Ni da ma. Now with the pa. Pa da pa ma ga ri. Now from down. Ga ma pa. Ga ma pa. Now ga pa ma ga ri ni sa ri. So like this, every note, whether it starts on sa, ri, ga, ma, pa, has got a greater purpose. You would, in fact, that's a separate session again where you can examine each note in the context of the whole composition to see how he has used intelligently not only the notes but the tones. The nada aspect has been well explored in this particular composition. Similarly, we could say of the Thodi Swarajati also. Due to paucity of time, I will not go into that now. And again, for example, Shyama Sastri, how the same Varali Gandhara is used in a very distinct manner by him. Like, for example, if you take Varali by Tyagarajar, Yeti Janma Midiha or Karunayela Kante or Kana Ruchira. So where the Vivadi note Ga is not the starting point. Or for example in Dikshidhar, Ma Ma But here, the Shama Sastri starts itself on the Gandharam like Ka. Again, Ka is a Swaraksharam also. So probably that is also in the mind. Ka. This probably inspired Shivan also, probably Ka, Va, Va. Again, I said one inspires the other. So it goes, it's a beautiful link. So here, Ka, Ma, Yakshi, Amba, Ka, Ma, Yakshi, Bangaru. Even if he goes up, he builds on that Ka only. Ka, Ma, Yakshi, Nanu, Brave, Ka. Then the Sangatis go off in a different way, but the starting point is Kama, Ga. Again, in the Swara Sahityam also, you would see that a reflection of this is seen. One aspect of Dikshadhar, finally, I would like to share is about how we could say that he was not only one who embraced Carnatic music and Hindustani, but also encompassed the beauties underlying in Western music. And this, all of us are very familiar with the note to swaras that he composed. 40 note to swaras he has composed, all in the Shankarabharanam scale. We have to make a mention of the scale and not ragam. Ragam means that which encompasses all the gamakas along with it. So he was actually a far-sighted musician in terms of when he used Shankarabharanam of Akshaya Ling Gavi Bha Swayam Bha, or many sets compositions of Tyagaraja also extols the Shankarabharanam like Yanduku Pedala Vale Bodhiyavu, or Shama Sastri Sarojadala Netri Himagiri Putri Nipada Bujamule Sadanam Mina Nama Shubhamyuma. Like this, we see that the Shankarabharanam as a raga has been elaborated to its zenith, I would say, by the Trimurti, Trinity. Dikshadhar, again, many times he thinks out of the box, I would say. So here also, how this Western music has influenced him to create the note swaras. Going back in history, we see that he lived at the time when the Britishers were ruling India. So at that time, what happened is that the government deputed army from the Scotland and Ireland. The army was deputed, and along with them, we see that a lot of musicians were also brought along with these army people, so that just to, kind of the free time, these musicians would play music for them just to remove their, fatigue and kind of make them brisk. So in this context, at Fort St. George, when all this music was played, Dikshadhar had the influence or the opportunity, I would say, of listening to all these scales. So it is, when we talk about Shankarabharanam as a scale, it is Sa Ri Ga Ma Pa Da Ni Sa Sa Ni Da Pa Ma Ga Ri Sa. So where, again also we see that it is the question of inspiration and not copying, where we see that the British anthem, the French anthem, all these were adopted by him. Why I say that it was a beautiful innovation is that he did not use English to compose his compositions. He used chaste, scholarly Sanskrit. And what is beautiful about these compositions is that within that 40 compositions, he starts from Ganesha and covers all the Hindu gods and goddesses, like Vishnu, Ramar, Murugar, Shiva, Saraswati, Devi, Hanuman. There is also here in this one composition on Maya also is there in this. So like this, in a way, I would say that these compositions are a treasure to teach children, where First thing, you don't have to struggle with the gamakas, where sa ri ga ma pa da ni sa ni da pa ma ga ri sa is used. But you also get to know our great Indian culture, all the gods, goddesses, without their even being conscious about the fact that they're learning about Ganesha or everything. And so beautiful it is that there are only 2 lines in each composition. But within that 2 lines, he says it all in terms of, you want to know about Ganesha, it's all there. You want to talk about Murugar, it's all there. So that's how, that's the greatness of the composer. One composition that he actually was inspired, the British national anthem, God Save the Queen. And that's why he composed the composition Santatam Pahi Mam, like Santatam Pahi Mam Sangeetashyamale Sarvadare Janani Chintitata Prade Chitrupini Shive Shri Guru Guha Sevite Shiva Mohakare. God save our gracious Queen, long live our noble Queen. God save our Queen. Send her victorious, happy and glorious, long to reign over us. God save our Queen. Santatam pahi mam Sangeetashyamale. So similarly, a couple of songs right from Ganesha. Shakti Sahita Ganapatim Shankaradi Sevitam Virakta Sakala Munivara Suraraja Vinuta Guru Gugam Bhaktali Poshakam Bhavasutam Vinayakam Bhukti Mukti Prada Bhushitangam Raktapadambujam Bhavayami Varashivabalam Vallilolam Vande Nandam Hariharamodam Hamsanandam Hasitamukam Guru Guharupam Guptakaram Gorakshantam Surapati Senam Subramanyam Suravinutam Varashivabalam Vallilolam Vande Nandam Shamale Meenakshi Sundareshwara Sakshi Sankari Guru Guha Samudbhave Shiveva Pamaramochani Pankajalochani Padmasanavani Harilakshmi Vinute Shambhavi Shamale Meenakshi Rama Janardana Ravana Mardana Ramanujagraja Raja Vibho Pamaramochana Pankajalochana Bhaktajana Priya Palaya Mam Bhumi Janayaka Bhukti Pradayaka Bhusura Palana Bhumi Pate Shamala Vigraha Shanta Guru Guha Sannuta Shri Ramachandra Prabho Santatam Pahi Mam Sangeetashyamale Anjaneyam Sada Bhavayami Aprameyam Muda Chintayami Anjananandanam Vanaresham Varam Panchavatram Sureshadi Vandyam Guru Guhahitam Shantam Sada Sevita Shri Rama Pada Pankajam Sanjeevi Parvata Karamukabjam Sada Ramachandram Dutam Bhaje Sada Ramachandram Dutam Bhaje Sada Ramachandram Dutam Bhaje. Like this, if we keep looking into the deeper layers of the compositions of the Trinity, we see that it is just a process of lifelong discovery. One life, no. 10 janma alla, 100 janma edthalum, the discovery process will keep continuing. And of course, within the time given, we can only just touch here and there a few things. And each time, of course, we can come up with new things which we discover from the compositions. But nevertheless, on a final note, I would like to share that what is very, very important about the Mummurtigal, Tyagaraja, Dikshidhar and Shyama Sastri is that it is not just about the compositions that they gave us, but the point is about how they lay the path for the future of our music. That is very, very important, because today if you are performing concerts, if you are teaching, if you are going to derive new ragas, if you are going to derive new compositions, for everything we draw inspiration from the Mummurtigal. In terms of the compositional structure, especially, I would make a mention of Tyagaraja, because his format of the Pallavi Anupallavi Charanam, which also discussed in a previous lecture, a typical format of a Pallavi Anupallavi Charanam with the Anupallavi's tune getting repeated in the Charanam, has been followed by so many composers who came afterwards. So it became like a role model composition, the Kriti that he created. Sometimes, of course, Dikshidhar, the kind of ragas that he created. In the Tala aspects, we have so many things of Dikshidhar, Shyama Sastri as well also, to see how they have used the Tala, the structure, to create the internal parts of the composition. Like this is an endless ocean that we can keep going on and on. But nevertheless, I would like to once again thank Sri Tyaga Brahmagana Sabha for giving me this wonderful opportunity to actually learn a few things in the process of discovering the genius of these great composers. And very humbly, I hope that it was at least a bit useful to you also as Rasikas. And I thank you all for making time to come here, because today we are in an entertainment world, so enrichment has become a very rare commodity today actually. The urge to be enriched, the urge to be enlightened is something very few people seek. And for seeking that, we also need a lot of time and space to be able to get into that fold. But once we get into the fold of this Trinity, it's a Pandora box, like they open to you. When you peep into that window and see that beautiful world that they've created, you just want to be in that flow. And that is the greatest of the greatest aspect of this genius, Tyagaraja, Shyama Sastri and Dikshidhar. Once again, thank you all very much. Namaskar.
We are extremely thankful to Dr. Radha Bhaskar for yet another wonderful presentation. We hope to have her again very soon. Our next program is on August 13th, a lectum by Sri Ghatam Karthik. Please do come and encourage it. Thank you.